This time we want to share our history bit today. I trust that each one who has been following us, I trust that you have been enjoying the history bits that we have been sharing. I trust that they have been informative and that they have been enlightening for you. And I trust that in the information that we have been giving, that it has caused you in Zion to be able to put those missing pieces that you might have had in your understanding of the scriptures together. Now, I don't know about you, but I know many years ago, in my desire to understand the scriptures a bit more accurately, I would read certain things and then I would have a question and I couldn't get that question answered. And I found that there were many cases where I had these missing puzzle pieces, if I could just use that term, that after I found them, it helped me to see the picture of the revelation of Elohim with greater accuracy. And when we give these history bits, that's our goal. That's our purpose, is to try to help the believer to see the plan, the purposes of the Most High with greater clarity. Now, today we're going to be talking about the Edomite expansion into Europe. Some might wonder, why talk about Edom? How is Edom essential to the scriptures? How is Edom essential to what's going on in the world? What does Edom have to do with anything? I have discovered that anytime the Almighty makes mention of a people or nation, and he has specific things that he has noted with regard to them, whether they are positive or negative, whether they are good or bad, whether it is him rewarding or punishing, it is of great significance because all of it impacts the plan of Elohim that he is working in and through his people. So it is important that we say something about this. So we're going to share about the Edomite expansion into Europe. And when we talk about this, we need to note that there is an individual, very significant individual, whom many are unfamiliar with from a historical perspective. For when we look in our Bibles, we see the name of a grandson of Esau. So what I want to do, I want to read first in Genesis chapter 36, verses 9 through 11. I want to read there first. Genesis chapter 36. And in the 36th chapter of Genesis, what we have is a listing of the descendants of Esau. And in the 9th verse, the text says, "These are the descendants of Esau, ancestor of the Edomites, in the hill country of Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, son of Adah, the wife of Esau; Reuel, the son of Esau's wife, Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz, this is his firstborn son, were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz." I want us to draw our attention to the third son listed of Eliphaz, named Zepho. In Bereshit or Genesis, this is the only time that we find Zepho mentioned. We find him as being listed in Esau's line, and we don't hear anything else about Zepho. And oftentimes when we see that in the scriptures, it would appear to us that this individual is not significant. But when we look over in another text that I consider to be scripture, and the ancient Messianic Israelite community considered to be scripture, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church considers to be scripture. This, and I made mention of this before, but I say it like I am a broken record. And that is because the Western Christian world does not honor this particular book. I have to say what I am saying to raise credibility for my use of the book. But this particular book was a source for Joshua and also for Samuel, for they both mention the book of Jasher in quoting information that was historical in their time. We read over in the 61st chapter of Jasher, and I want to read verses 24 and 25. It speaks about this Zepho. And what is noted about Zepho is that he went into the land of Kittim. Now, most of us know that the present names of the nations of the world as they exist today are not the names of the original ancestors that dwelt in those lands in time past. So the scriptures, when it refers to Kittim, sometimes it is spelled Kittim, other times it may be spelled Chittim, and the spelling is just primarily due to how you pronounce the Hebrew. But in the land of Kittim is that area that we would regard as Southern Europe, in particular Italy, and also much of Greece and Macedonia. These areas were called the land of Kittim. And so what we see when we look in Jasher chapter 61, I want to read this, verse 24 and 25. It says, "And the children of Kittim saw the valor of Zepho, and the children of Kittim resolved, and they made Zepho king over them. And he became king over them, and while he reigned, they went in to subdue the children of Tubal." For those who are not familiar with Tubal, if you look on an ancient map, you'll find that Tubal is located in that region of what we would call Asia Minor. Those are the lands of the Greeks in the ancient times. And it says, "and all the surrounding islands." So all of that region around what we call Italy and Greece, all of those islands were ruled by this man named Zepho. "And their king Zepho went at their head, and they made war with Tubal and the islands, and they subdued them. And when they returned from the battle, they renewed his government for him, and they built for him a very large palace and his royal habitation and seat. And they made a large throne for him. And Zepho reigned over the whole land of Kittim and over the land of Italia," that's Italy, 50 years. So this man Zepho, who was the grandson of Esau, went and became king over that region, which is in particularly Rome. During the time roughly roundabout when Joseph, everybody's familiar with Joseph, when Joseph, one of our Israelite ancestors, had passed away in Egypt. This is when we find Zepho going into that area. Now, one might ask, why is that significant? It is significant because the Edomites have a prophecy upon them. And I'm not going to talk about those prophecies at this time, but if you're interested in wanting to know more about it, please attend our course that we have. We're going to be talking about that in detail. But what we see is the beginning of the Edomite expansion into what we presently would regard as Rome. And with that expansion, we see how the sons of Edom infiltrated and began to move all throughout southern Europe. One might ask, do you have confirmation to that? Are there any other records that refer to those areas or those lands as being attached to Edom? Yes, we do. In many of the rabbinic Jewish writings in their literature, when they refer to Rome, they refer to Rome as Edom. There was also something that I noted. I was reading a book called The 13th Tribe, and it was describing a letter that had been written by one of the kings of Khazaria. And this particular king of Khazaria, when he referred to the Byzantines, sometimes I get my tongue mixed up, the Roman Byzantine Empire, he called them the Edomites. And he also referred to the Islamic powers, the Ishmaelites. This was noted, say, roughly back in the time frame of, we would say, the 10th and 11th century. See, during that particular time in history, they still use those old ancient terms. They would call those who were from the sons of Ishmael, Ishmaelites. Those who were from the sons of Edom, Edomites. But because much of our history that we presently have does not include these terms, in order for us to make those associations, because we have a world today that has dismantled the whole idea of maintaining an affiliation and a connection to an ancestral bloodline. The world we live in today would rather connect you to the nation you presently live in. But we share this today because we have found it essential for Israel to understand who these powers are. What prophetic word has been spoken over these powers that impact things in succeeding generations that are going to bring about the purposes of Elohim? I want to say there was a statement made by Rebecca, or to Rebecca, with regard to Jacob and Esau when they were in the womb. And the statement was, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 nations. And the one would be stronger than the other, but the elder would serve the younger. I don't have time to get into all of the prophetic details with regard to that, but it is something that I would encourage those who would like to know more about the purposes that has been spoken over Esau and the purposes that have been spoken over Jacob, if they would investigate that. And I believe that when you begin to look at it, you will see that much of what is going on in our world is very easily understood by going back to the prophecy of those two sons. So I trust that the information that we just shared today has been informative. It is important that we understand who's where. There are many who will say that, well, Edom doesn't exist. No, Edom still exists. And there is record and evidence and testimony throughout history to identify who Edom is. And so I trust that this has been helpful to you and that it has stirred you a little bit. Hopefully, it'll cause you to want to search and to learn more about this. Well, the Almighty be praised.